topic today is going to be looking at ideas for the Haggadah. I'm actually preparing for a shiur I'm going to give for my community, which is entitled 4 Whiskies and 4 Ideas on the Seder night. The idea being we would do the double mitzvah of getting rid of stocks of whiskey and at the same time do the mitzvah of being inspired, getting some new ideas for our Seder table. So if you've got a whiskey available, after each whiskey, or after each idea I should say, we'll make a little l'chaim and actually going to tie it into that idea when we get to it, to talk about the 4 cups of wine, why we actually have a l'chaim and the 4 cups of wine. I'll mention that as we go to that. So I'm actually not going for the whiskey. I've got a glass of water and it's lunchtime, so you don't have to, if you want to join me for a glass of water or a cup of tea, whatever you want to do, after each idea we'll make a l'chaim to each other. I do know a couple of people here. First of all, I also know Rabbi Lawrence, I know Barry Zakon, and I do know Mr. Artman as well through Dan. So it's nice to see you. And there's I think I might have met David and Brian when I came to give a live talk in the shul. But I hope some of you can't see at the moment, but I hope that the idea is going to will give you ideas for your Seder night. So we got about 40 minutes, is that right?
45 minutes, but not too many whiskey ideas for Seder night.
No, they're not whiskey ideas. The idea is to have a whiskey, whilst we can still have whiskies, but at lunchtime, just have a glass of water, that's fine. Okay, I'm actually going to share my screen with you. If you've got any questions as we go through or comments, please do unmute yourself and or make it interactive. Okay, so here we go. Just share my screen. And from the beginning, there we go. There we go. So yeah, this is going to be a developing shiur, which I'll be doing with my community as well. It's called 4 Whiskies and 4 Ideas on Haggadah. And here we go. So the first idea I want to get through you is actually very practical, because as well as all the inspiration, there we go. We got 4 whiskies behind Rabbi Lawrence. Thank you.
4 Ardbegs there, nice and easy.
Fantastic. So I want to go with you just to review what we actually need to do on Seder night. I mean, obviously we've all been through Seders before, but to really get to understand what is the goal of Seder night. So actually, there's 5 mitzvahs to perform on Seder night. There are sub mitzvahs within that, but in terms of our biblical obligations and what we actually have to achieve on the Seder night, there are 2 things we have to do on Seder night. The first one is to tell over the story of the going out of Egypt, and we use the Haggadah as our guide. And although we have the idea, and it's actually brought up in the Haggadah, not in the Haggadah itself, that we mention the going out of Egypt every day of our life, kol yemei chayecha, all the days of life, the nighttime and the daytime, we mention it, but on Seder night we are reliving it. So we have the Torah brings in total 4 sources for giving over, or the mitzvah of telling over. 3 of them are predicated on questions. It will be in the future when your son asks, or when your son asks in the future. But the 4th source, which is the main source, you should tell over to your son, and that is where we get the word Haggadah or Magid. It's to tell over the story, and it has to be relevant and engaging. If you look at all the sources through the Shulchan Aruch, it mentions there that it should not be done in Hebrew. If those who are at your Seder don't understand it, in our Seder night, we do, apart from the blessings, we do everything in English, because it has to be engaging and it has to be relevant to those. So obviously this year and last year as well, it's going to be very minimum Seders, but whether however many people we've got around our Seder, it's not just going through the text. That's the text is our basis, but we're meant to engage with the text. We're meant to bring it alive. And we know that the Haggadah, we start off with the negative. The Gemara in Pesachim says we start off with the Genut and we finish off with Shevach regarding the Jewish people. And there's a dispute. We quote that we were originally idol worshippers, and we also mentioned that we were slaves in Egypt. But then at the end, we talk about our freedom and our great destiny and our responsibility of the Jewish people to be the chosen nation. So that's the sort of journey we make in terms of the story. And in fact, psychologically, with this idea of going back to talking about our degradation, that we were idol worshippers, we were slaves, is really our strength, because we should never forget where we came from. And although we are called the chosen people, we are the chosen people, but that greatness is that we persevere with our humility, and always remember that our humanity, we were also idol worshippers, we were also physically the lowest as being slaves. So it's a very important element of the Seder night. We know that the Haggadah is the main section is based on 4 verses, which we expound on, and we'll go on to that in a minute when we look at the 4 verses we talk about when we bring the first fruits to Jerusalem. And then the other thing to do, which helps us with the mitzvah, is right at the very end, we mention that Rabbi Gamliel's teaching that on the Seder night, as part of the Haggadah, we have to mention Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. What's also interesting, and this comes up in the order that we eat the Matzah and the Maror, we would have thought that we start off with having Maror first, and then we have Matzah, because Maror is the bitterness, and Matzah, and certainly the Pesach, represents our freedom. So it really, you would have thought the order that Rabban Gamliel brings it, and also the order that we actually relive it, is it should be Maror, Matzah, Pesach, but it's in the reverse order. And I think one of the ideas behind it is that in order to we have the freedom, the Matzah and the Pesach, we mentioned Pesach and Matzah. Only once we've gone through that, then we can mention the Maror to understand in hindsight that we had to go through those difficulties. In fact, often it's the difficulties and challenges in life that make us who we are. So we mentioned Pesach, Matzah first, and only then Maror, because in retrospect, we can go back and think about the suffering that we had. And again, historically, we do that for Seder night, but we can think of that for our own lives as well. Okay, so that's the first biblical mitzvah. Then the second one is matzah. And it's not, I mean, although it seems obvious, but there's a way that we perform the matzah, ideally with shmur matzah, based on the verse of shmartem et hamatzot. You should guard the matzot. I know we're on at the start we say this we hold up the matzah. This is the lechem oni, the bread of our poverty, and the price of shmur matzahs. When we buy a box of matzahs, those are shmur matzahs. We understand why it's the bread of our poverty, but it's the hidur is to have that if we can get hold of that. And when I didn't necessarily knew till I became more observant about how much we have to eat. The mitzvah of matzah is not just about chewing a little bit of matzah. It's actually eating the equivalent of a sheet of a machine matzah or a third of a hand-baked matzah. And we know we have to do it reclining without any talking. And actually, it's 3 times we're going to have that amount. The initial amount when we eat the matzah, and then we have the sandwich, hillel sandwich, and the afikomen at the end. We know we have to allow ourselves enough room in our tummy to be able to eat the afikomen. Again, it's about a sheet of matzah. So if you bear that in mind, when we get to the Seder night, that's how to, in order to fulfill that mitzvah properly. And one beautiful idea about the difference between matzah and chametz. I don't know if you can see at the bottom of my screen there. There's one letter difference between matzah and chametz, and that's the hey and the chet. So what is it's an interesting observation, but what does it come to teach us? So maybe I'll just stop my share for a moment so I can say hello properly. So this is the letter hey. So matzah is spelt with a hey, and chametz is with a chet, which looks like that. So what's the difference between matzah and chametz? It's time. So this is matzah, but if you let the dough rise like this, it becomes a chet. Yeah. So the matzah turns into chametz. So that's the way we know that Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language, is so beautiful. That's a beautiful demonstration that's the matzah becomes chametz. There we go. I see David likes that idea. Okay, let's go back to sharing, and that's. Okay, so that's the biblical mitzvahs. What about the rabbinical mitzvahs? So we have 3 rabbinical mitzvahs to fulfill in the evening. Eating the maror. Again, as we mentioned before, we mentioned maror after the matzah. Again, so we can process the trauma or the challenges we went through. So the maror, again, in biblical times, in temple times, it was a biblical obligation. But now, after the temple times, because it was eating with a paschal offering, it's gone down to a rabbinical mitzvah. So therefore, we have a certain shiur are meant to have, which is equivalent about 20 centimeters by 15 centimeters of lettuce, or if you're having horseradish, it's quite a significant amount. So be careful when you eat that. Again, obviously, it's not. You have to eat it within a certain time, and you don't have it reclining because it's a sign of our sign of our suffering. And the 4 cups of wine, again, they drunk at the different parts of the Seder, and ideally within one go, and we're reclining, and it's based on the 4 expressions of redemption. And finally, the last rabbinical mitzvah we have to do on the evening, which is really the whole idea, is reciting of Hallel to show our gratitude, to praise Hashem. And Hallel is the pun, it's sandwiched between the meal. We have a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end. And I'm going to share an idea with that when we get to that. Okay, so that's the first idea. We've gone through all the, David's got a question. The first, there we go. I want to wish everybody l'chaim. That's the first idea, l'chaim.
First, I must go and get my whiskey. But I thought that one of the times when we drink wine, at least, it actually says you drink it leaning.
Yeah, we recline. We recline. All 4 cups of wine we're meant to recline.
Right, I misunderstood that.
Yeah, all 4 cups are meant to recline. In fact, if we don't recline, both for the matzah and the maror, the matzah and the wine, then strictly speaking, you should go back and have another bit of matzah or another bit of wine, and do it again reclining, because we have to do it in a way of with freedom. Yeah. Good. Thank you, David. Thanks for the clarification. Any questions so far? Okay. That was just, again, just to go through that, because that once, if we know that all those things properly, that is really the inspiration. Let me share with you now some specific ideas about the Haggadah that we can take away with. I hope these are new ideas for you. And so the next 3 ideas, go. Oops, right, is the symbolism of the karpas, which is the dipping vegetable into the salt water. So what is the idea of that? So the main idea which the Gemara brings is that it's in order to mix up the evening. It's to create curiosity, that we're doing things differently, and we usually make hamotzi and then we go straight into washing our hands in order to have the bread or the matzah, but we do something different. So the main reason the Gemara brings is that's in order to get the kids to ask the questions. Why are we dipping and why are we doing this, etc., etc. Now, there's many of our commentators given answers to this. The first idea I want to share with you is from the Shem Mishmur. And so the same Shmuel says that the theme of the evening is reliving the Exodus, and it's a beautiful idea that he brings. And he says as follows: when the Jewish people arrived in Egypt, when Moses arrived in Egypt, and he came with the message there's going to be freedom, the Jewish people didn't leave straight away. They were very excited that Moses came, and they understood that he was going to be the deliverer of the Jewish people. But it was going to be 12 months, according to most of the commentaries on the Chumash, going through all the 10 plagues. Only then, after the 10th plague, would the Jewish people leave. So they had a taste of freedom that Moses came and he gave the message, but it took a process of time. So the Shem Mishmur says that based on the Rambam, we know the Rambam was a doctor. And he says when we eat, the idea is that we're meant to start with light foods, like vegetables or salad, then go on to fish, and then go on to meat. And the idea is of having lighter food first, especially that the vegetable is to open up the stomach, so be ready to receive the heavier foods. So on Seder night, there's a little bit of a tease, because we have this little bit of vegetable dipped in salt water, and as it were, the stomach thinks, oh great, we're going to get a nice slap up meal. but it doesn't happen straight away. Especially when we go through the Haggadah, it takes a bit of time to actually get to the main meal. So he says this is a way of one of the ways on Seder night we demonstrate that we're reliving the story. So he says we had the taste of freedom. Moses came to Egypt to deliver the message, but it took 12 months until we actually left. So this is parallel to our eating experience. We started with a little bit of parsley or a bit of carrots, whatever we use for the karpas, but it's a bit of a tease because it's only much later in the evening we get our freedom, as it were, which is the main meal. Yeah. So just wanted to see. Has anybody heard that idea before? Seen that idea before? Okay. Right. Okay. Let me share with you another idea on the karpas, and then we can have our second l'chaim. The second idea in karpas is brought by Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, and there are other people who bring this as well. That we use the karpas as a hint of the sale of Joseph. Again, the one of the ideas on Seder night, we talk about our freedom from Egypt, but how do we get into Egypt in the first place? Well, unfortunately, it was through the disunity of the Jewish people when both the Joseph who spoke against his brothers and the brothers who sold him down to Egypt, and they took his coat and they dipped it in the blood and they showed the coat to Jacob, and there is a hint that so at the beginning of the Seder we do this ceremony called the dipping of the karpas into the salt water, and it's meant to remind us of the sale of Joseph, and really our movement through the Seder is to enhance our Jewish unity, our love for our brethren. And unusual years, we have people, we share the Seder with other people, and certainly as a Jewish nation, we think that we are part of an evening which has been shared all over the world of coming together, Jewish unity, reconnecting to our history. So he gives a hint to how we see this in a bit in the sources. So there's the Gemara in Pesachim, which describes in the temple times how they used to bring back the Korban Pesach. They went up to the temple, then they took their Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering, back to their families. How did they do that? So the Gemara in Pesachim says they did it in a way that they wrapped it up in the skin of the animal. They didn't have cling film in those days, or the Just Kosher bags. Yeah, they just so they wrapped it up in the skin and they carried it on their back. And the Gemara says, just like the way of the Arab merchants. So Rabbi Shlomo Kluger says, that's an amazing hint, because that's how it's a hint to Joseph. Joseph was, as it were, slung into the caravan and taken down to Egypt by the Arab merchants, Yishmaelim. The Orchat Yishmaelim took him down to Egypt. So therefore, so there's a hint at the beginning of the process of bringing the Paschal offering back to home. They were thinking about the Joseph story. So nowadays we don't have that. So what do we have instead? Again, we have this idea of the karpas. Furthermore, Rabbi Kluger says there's a hint to karpas and the story of Joseph when it describes Joseph's coat. It's called kasonit pasim. It says here, I don't know if you see the screen. When Rashi says, what is kasonit pasim? Pasim is loshon klei milis. It's fine wool, kamor karpas utecheles, which is mentioned in Megillat Esther. Karpas is a fine green wool. So therefore, in the actual story about Joseph, there's a hint, again, according to Rashi, that's the wool, like karpas, which is the green wool. So it hints to the Joseph story. Okay, so there we go. And we can have our second l'chaim. There we go. L'chaim. One of the ideas of the having the different cups of wine, the 4 cups of wine through the Seder, is literally to internalize the message. Each stage we go to, so we're taking the wine and we're contemplating before we go into the next stage. So that's why I thought of this idea of each idea we had would share this l'chaim. Okay, let's move on to the third idea now, this is something which is, I don't know, when I was a kid, I used to watch Sesame Street, and Sesame Street used to be sponsored by a letter or a number. So if you could say the same for Seder night, the Seder night is sponsored by the number 4. There are so many 4s on Seder night. I just get a bit of interaction. What 4s do you know on Seder night?
Cups of wine.
4 cups of wine. What else?
4 sons.
4 sons. Barry?
No, he pinched my last one.
Okay.
Give me a moment.
I got one.
Yeah, go on.
4 questions.
There's 4 questions. What else is there? There's actually 4 matzahs as well. Although we have 3 matzahs, we break the middle matzah, so there becomes 4. Yeah. Let me just show you. Any other 4s you know of? Okay, let me just show you what other 4s there are. Just remember the list I made. Okay. So we have got the number 4s come up, the 4 cups of wine, the 4 matzahs, the 4 sons, the 4 languages of redemption, the 4 questions, and then we're going to see in the main section of the Haggadah we expound on 4 verses. Which, you know, an Aramean tried to destroy my father. That was from the Seder Oki Tavo. And there's 4 verses there. The number 4 comes up many times. Why is that? What is the message of number 4? So the Vilna Gaon, the genius of Vilna, says that there's the number 4 comes up when we're giving our Thanksgiving offering. In fact, next week's Seder Tzav, not this week, next week's Seder of Tzav, but talks about the Thanksgiving offering, and we'll recognize it from the blessing of Hagomel, which we say nowadays. If somebody has gone through an operation or he's traveled overseas, there's 2 other things we have as well. Then they'll make a special blessing. In the times of the temple, they would actually bring a Thanksgiving offering. What are the 4 things? Crossing over the desert, crossing over a body of water, release from prison, and healing if somebody's healed. And the Vilna Gaon says the redemption process had all those 4 situations. We obviously crossed the desert, we crossed the Red Sea, we released from prison, which was the slavery in Egypt, and when we arrived at Mount Sinai, we were physically and spiritually healed. So therefore, the redemptive process is tied up to the number 4. Let me take that a bit further with you. And so it becomes the central theme is Thanksgiving, which is about giving the first fruits, which is what we quote from on the Seder nights, and also that the meal itself, as we mentioned, is sandwiched by Hallel. Very interestingly, we split Hallel in 2, and actually I thought of an idea. It's not an equal split, just like the matzah. We break the matzah in 2. We have the smaller part for the first part of the Seder, and the larger part is saved for later. Similarly with the Hallel as well, we break the Hallel in 2, and we just do the first 2 chapters for the beginning of the Seder, and then we have the larger part of Hallel for the end. But we see that the whole of the Seder night and the meal itself is bracketed either side by the idea of giving praise to Hashem. So the strong theme, and I'm going to take this idea further, of the Seder night is through the number 4, is all about thanking Hashem and giving our gratitude to Hashem. Let me take the idea a bit further with you, and then we can have our third l'chaim. And the 4th son of Jacob was Yehuda. Yehuda means todah, which is gratitude, means thanks. And in fact, the Jewish people are called the Yehudim. That's where we are. The defining feature of the Jews are we are grateful. Although sometimes when we go to kosher restaurants, you know, the Jewish people often groan. They said about the waiter in a kosher restaurant. He goes up to the customer and said, "Is there anything okay with the meal?" Yeah. Anyway, but the real true essence of a Jew is that we're meant to. We are the Yehudim. We are grateful, and one of the main nights this comes out is on Seder night, which again is sponsored by the number 4. How else does number 4 relate to the idea of gratitude? So the name Yehuda itself contains Hashem's 4-letter name, which is Yud Hey Vav Hey, plus the letter Dalet. In fact, that comes in a very deep idea. We know we just had the festival of Purim. On Purim, Hashem's name does not appear in the Megillah, but it does appear through our name. The name Yehudim appears many, many times in the Haggadah. So although Hashem doesn't appear, he manifests himself through us. And that's the idea of a Jew. A Jew's life is to live a life of gratitude, of seeing God, and through our actions, what we say, what we think about, what we do in this world, we bring Hashem into the world. So although Hashem doesn't appear, we appear in the Megillah. So therefore, that's the idea. And furthermore, the main descendant of Yehuda is David, which is spelled Daled V'Daled. Again, the number 4, Daled is the 4th letter. And furthermore, the other meaning of the word dalet is dull. In fact, in the Hallel we say "Mikimi mi afardal." Hashem lifted me up from the dust, and so it represents the idea of humility. And it's only through humility that we can give thanks to Hashem. So the Seder is about being dalet, being humble. So it's sponsored by the letter dalet and the number 4. Furthermore, it relates to the doors. There's many doors connected to Seder night. First of all, at the beginning, we open up the door and we welcome guests in a COVID-friendly way. Hopefully, I don't know, we can do that. In usual years, we open up our doors and we welcome people in. At the end of the Seder, we open the door to Elijah. And also the whole story about we put the blood on the doorpost. So interesting, the letter Daled is actually looks like the letter door. It's got two sides to it, and the word Dalet itself, a delet, is a door. So it's about opening our heart to Hashem, letting guests and Hashem into our Seder night. And finally, the idea of the number 4 relates to the ladies on the who knows 4, and we say 4 other mothers. And it was actually the mother Leah who called her son Yehuda. And mothers, as opposed to maybe fathers, more represent the concept of gratitude, because the ladies, through the way we live our lives, they humbly show the way they give and the impact onto the Jewish home. It's often the men folk who want to take the full credit for everything, but the women more humbly step back, and they don't necessarily need to want to seek the light. They just want to get on and do things. So it's the women who represent the number 4, which represents the idea of gratitude, which represents the idea of humility. So I hope I've demonstrated through this idea the power of the number 4. It appears many, many times on the Seder night, and it represents our true essence, which is brought out through the Hallel on Seder night. And by the way, Hallel is obviously written by David, who's related to Yehuda. So we see there's many, many connections to the number 4. Okay, there we go. That's the Jewish mothers. And this is our third cup, sorry. L'chaim to everybody. Thanks for staying with me. We've got one more idea to share with you. L'chaim. Thank you, Barry. Okay, one more idea to do. And that's the question which is often asked. And why do we finish off with children's songs? We've been through quite an inspiring Seder night. And we finish off with who knows one, and there was a song, what do you call it, a Haggadah, which is a bit like an old lady who swallowed a fly and all that stuff. So traditionally people say, well, in order to keep the kids up late. But really, you can ask the question. I don't know what time your Seder night finished. For the very little kids who might be into these sort of silly little songs, if we could say that, then those very little kids are probably in bed. So why are we grown adults singing these songs at the end of the Seder night? Yeah. So I think that I'm going to present to you 2 ideas. One of the ideas is, although there is a whole load of complexities about how we fulfill halacha and how we're meant to do things, in the end, it's all about emunah pshuta, simple belief. And we finish many things. We often go down to basics, and we notice, for example, in our prayers 3 times a day, we finish off with a simple idea: Bayom hahu Hashem yeh echad u'shemo echad. On that day, Hashem's name will be one, and His essence will be one, and He will be one. When we get to the very best, that we sometimes it's important to get things simple and easy. So on the Seder night, although children may or may not be up, we need to get the message of getting our emunah pshuta, simple, basic emunah. So how is that seen out? So Haggadah, and there's a beautiful explanation of what the Haggadah is, which is about the goats and the dog and the cat, and eventually goes up to the shochet, and then it finishes the malach hamaves, and then it's eventually Hashem. So what's the idea of this song? So there's a midrash that says that it's based on the story of Abraham and Nimrod. When Abraham was confronted by Nimrod, who was the nemesis of Abraham. So he asked Abraham to bow down to his tree, to his wooden idol. And Abraham said, I would bow down to your wooden idol, but before I do that, let me bow down to the tree, God, because it was wasn't for the tree god, then you wouldn't get your wooden idol. So Nimrod said, okay, fine, you bow down to the tree god. He said, before I bow down to the tree god, do you mind if I bow down to the rain gods? Because if it wasn't for the rain, then you wouldn't have a tree growing. And they said, okay, fine, you bow down to the rain god. I said, before I bow down to the rain god, can I bow down to the wind god? Why is that? Because if it wasn't for the wind, then you wouldn't have any rain. And eventually, so he got it back to Hashem. And by that time, Nimrod got saved through him in the fiery furnace, and he survived. But the idea again here, the Haggadah, it takes us through stages. It was the ghost and the cat and the dog and the cow, the cow and the malach, and then eventually it was back to Hashem. And again, like the idea we meant, these songs and maybe the childlike simplicity of emunah, of faith, is we source everything back to Hashem. And so we finish off with these types of songs because that's the take-home message from the Seder night. One more idea to share with you. And that is the Echad Miyodea. And again, a similar sort of thing. Who knows one? We're just playing around with numbers here. So Rabbi Eli Liopin says a beautiful idea. Again, this song comes right at the end of the Seder night to see where we're holding with our connection to our faith and to Hashem. If you go to a psychologist and you said, they might ask you to give you a certain item or number, what do you think of when I say, holiday? And they might say, well, a person might think, beach or something. And the psychologist can tell about a person when you mention a certain thing or number. If I give you a number, what do you think of? So we can tell a person by what they answer certain things. So we ask the question, who knows one? Yeah. So one might be, so one, we say straight away to Hashem. So we can see where we're holding. Two, somebody might say, well, 2 is the time that Arsenal won against, or whatever football team. If you think your football teams, whatever it is, if we're associating it back to our tradition, so that's where we see where we're holding it. They say tonight, what's one? One is Hashem. 2 is the tablets. 3 is the fathers. 4 the mothers. We're connecting ourselves back into our history and our faith. So although on the surface, why do we finish off with these children's songs? There's a deeper essence to it. It's getting the message simple, emunah pashuta, and connecting us back to our history. Okay, so one more l'chaim to make. There we go, and hopefully we'll finish on time as well. So there we go, l'chaim. I hope you've enjoyed the ideas. Just to go a quick summary of what we've done today. And then if you've got any questions, we can do that. If you go to Israel and you ask somebody how they are, they might say B'seder. Yeah, Hakol B'seder. Hakol B'seder. If you're asking somebody, Hakol Mashlomcha, Hakol B'seder. So there's an idea. The Seder night is so important to our connection to our faith, to our connection to our people, and to ourselves and to Hashem. That Hakol B'seder, how we do our Seder, the energy, the enthusiasm, the ideas, the love, the passion we put in, that sets us up for the whole year. It's the Rosh Hashanah for Emunah. It's the according to the Siva Shalom, it's the new year for Emunah. It's a time to re-energize that faith that we've got, especially in the challenging year that we have. We have to embrace, and that's why I'm so grateful that you've come in to join and to learn these ideas together. So that's the Hakol B'seder. Then we learned through the 5 mitzvahs that we need to fill on Seder nights, the 2 biblical ones and the 3 rabbinical ones. We also learned 2 ideas about the Karpas, about reliving the Exodus. We also learned about Joseph Coates, which is all about Jewish unity. We also learned about the message of 4 in Seder night, which is the message of gratitude. And finally, we learned about the kids' songs, which is about simplicity and rebirth. There we go. Any thoughts or questions? Yes, David.
Just a thought, because as you gathered from before, I was in a previous life a teacher, and one of the first things I did was to teach maths. And one of the basic principles in that teaching, to try and get an idea over, would be to go back to the simplest question that related to what I was trying to teach. So that seemed to me is how that particularly related to songs at the end. You go back to the simplest ideas, and it helps you to understand something even better. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Just to quote 2 people on what you've just said. First of all, Rabbi Abraham Twersky of blessed memory. I remember in the 1980s, he used to come to England quite a lot and give talks, and that started getting into my learning as well at that time. and he's a very sagely person. And I thought, wow, he's going to be like, when he gives a lecture, it's going to be very but the ideas were so simple. It takes, it's boiling it down to the basic message. That's one person I wanted to quote. The other person is also, we lost this year, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. In fact, both for Rabbi Lawrence and for myself, I learned actually this through Rabbi Lawrence about Rabbi Sachs, was that Rabbi Sachs, when he's teaching rabbis, he said, what is the take-home message you want to get across? Make sure whatever sermon or whatever article you're writing, write that down in a small sentence and make sure you get it across. And then at the end, you summarize so people can go away and they can take it. And the same with the Seder night. That's what it's all about. And the basic idea, all the complexities, all the things you have to do, as we said, bottom line, it's emunah, it's getting you that faith in Hashem again, re-energizing it. Yeah, that's great. Good. Any other thoughts or questions from the presentation?
Thank you very much. I've tried to make some notes, but I hope I managed to understand them afterwards.
Okay, I'm happy. I can send my presentation to Rabbi Lawrence, and he can send it on to whoever's on this group. Is that okay?
Yes, please. That'd be good.
Yeah.
New ideas there. I haven't come across before.
Okay, good. Not everybody I can see, but I'm sure they were listening in. So thank you so much for joining me, Rabbi Lawrence. He's still there. He's still gone. It looks like he's gone for lunch or something. Yeah.
I just had one question, which maybe it's not it's too you won't have an answer straight away, but it doesn't really matter. But there's a bracha, Goel Yisrael, right in the middle. Goel.
Yeah.
And it seems to me to be the bracha of the Seder, and yet I can't find anything about it anywhere. Nobody seems to.
The bracha of God, the one we say when we complete the Maggid section, you mean?
Yeah. Nobody seems to say very much about it.
The actual bracha. I've got my Haggadah over here. What did you want to know about it?
No, I just it seems to me to be the bracha of the Seder.
Yeah.
Because it's about the Seder. And nobody makes very much about it. It seems to be not very important.
It's very. I mean, the text is so beautiful. The actual words of the blessing. That when you get to it, and you're about to do the second cup, and you hold up the cup, and you say that God saved us, and it summarizes a lot of the ideas. Interesting enough, and this is an idea I heard from in terms of the brachas I heard from Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein. Was that he not Emanuel, but his father, Rabbi Isaac Bernstein. He was the Rav, your Rav in Kinnos. He asked the question: why do we not say a blessing of Hallel on Seder nights? We say when we're in shul, we say a blessing on Hallel. Why do we not say a bracha? He said a beautiful idea, because really on Seder night, it should be a natural thing to praise Hashem, as we showed you the number 4s. Yeah. So we don't need Asher Kiddishanu, but Vertzivanu, that God commands us to say Hallel. Why? Because it should be. We don't be commanded. We're so happy. We're so grateful on Seder nights. We actually don't make a bracha because it's not necessary. We just sing it out. We don't need to say a blessing. So it's a beautiful idea. But Barry, I'll think about your question. If I see any nice ideas on the actual blessing, I'll forward it to Rabbi Lawrence to forward it to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good. Listen, thank you so much for joining me this lunchtime.
Thank you very much, Kyle.
I hope you got even one idea from that, which is something, a bit of energy or something from what we've just done.